Welcome, everyone. Hello again. In case you missed it 2 minutes ago, my name is Adele Rodriguez, and I'll be your MC and one of your panelists for today's session. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the Senior Marketing Manager at Trust Radius. Let's see, there we go. And I manage all the marketing and client events as well as customer marketing programs. I'm going to get this started by introducing my fellow panelists and supremely amazing marketers. And today, rather than ask them to share a fun fact, we're going to share our favorite COVID guilty pleasure. Mine is donuts. Been eating a lot of donuts during quarantine. So first up, we've got Courtney Smith, the Senior Field and ABM Manager at 6 Sense. Courtney is a rock star marketer that really prides herself on creating winning go-to marketing activities that build that sales pipeline and support new customer acquisition and strengthen client relationships. Welcome, Courtney.
Hey, thanks, Adele. Pleasure to be here. Let's see, my COVID guilty pleasure. I've been watching a lot of TV, which I'm sure most of us are, but I found myself super into the sci-fi teen dramas. And it's really taught me that all I really need to be successful in life is just to find like a super sexy vampire. So I'm one step away from having it all, ladies.
Awesome. Okay, next up we've got Shruti Kumar, the Senior Marketing Manager at Sendoso. Now, Shruti was the first marketing hire at Sendoso, and she built the company's marketing program from the ground up. She's super passionate about creating great in-person and virtual experiences, great content, best practices, and enabling her team to be successful. Welcome, Shruti.
Thanks, Adele. I'm so excited to be here. And in the same vein as Adele, my fun fact from COVID has been revolved around food. I was never like quite the foodie before, other than just going out to good restaurants. But now every night before I go to sleep, I need to look at my food Instagrams and videos. So I highly recommend to follow Half Baked Harvest and Brock Your Body. And I love recreating their recipes.
Awesome. Love that. All right, last but not least, we've got Keely O'Neill, Demand Generation Manager from Splash. Keely has worked across the marketing spectrum in event marketing, event management, data analytics, and demand gen. Welcome, Keely.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Oh man, guilty pleasures. There's a lot of them. Definitely had time to develop some, but I would have to say Jeopardy is my indoor guilty pleasure. I started really watching it, and a good way to trick people is to rewatch it. And then you look really good. And then I also got a paddleboard. So now that the summer's here, I'm kind of social distancing on the water, and that's been really nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I love to see all these faces from across marketing to talk about events. So we are going to get right into it. So we're here to talk about digital events, and we really wanted to kick it off with how we're surviving the first half of 2020. We all know that digital events aren't just webinars, but we thank you all for being at this webinar. And I think we wanted to all share a little bit of background about the types of events that each of us have run, and how we've pivoted and what worked.
I can start us off. I'd love to just give an example of something that we've done that's worked really well. So when the pandemic hit, we were in the middle of doing a 8-city roadshow to our C-level CMO audience. And the format was just in-person breakfast roundtable style. And for the last 2 cities, we actually had to go virtual. So we did Uber Eats gift cards to still try to be able to provide the attendees breakfast. We had everyone turn their cameras on so that you could still feel like you were engaging. And we weren't really sure how that would go, but it was so successful that we decided to continue the series. And now we've been running the series for almost 4 months, and we continue to see engagement, and we've built a really, really strong community around it.
That's awesome, Courtney. I remember when you guys did that pivot, because we were sponsors for the last 2 road shows in New York and Boston, and then they turned virtual. So as a sponsor, I will also say we saw it pay back in dividends. For us, we leaned into virtual events, so larger scale webinars, smaller networking events, happy hours, prospect and customer focused events, which historically the field marketing team didn't focus on just on its own. And that was something that changed very early on. And what has worked for us is just really leaning into content and co-marketing. And that was seen for us in our first virtual event. It was early April. It was part of that first big pivot that you saw in virtual events. So it was called The Show Must Go On. If you haven't seen it, check it out now. You can see it on Sendosa.com. But we had 10 sponsors. We had a lot of industry leaders, speakers talking, just really talking about where people could focus their efforts other than in-person events.
Awesome. I mean, one of the things that I focused on was I was doing a lot of client events. So I'm a little different in terms of at Trust Radius, we support our clients at their events. And so with all of these big summits and user events going digital, we had to pivot very quickly on and create best practices for how to best support our clients at their events to help drive reviews, while also simultaneously building out a whole new content program. I mean, we would do maybe one, webinar here and there. And once COVID hit, we really had to pivot and started focusing more on drinking our own Kool-Aid and doing customer stories and providing content that was going to be relevant. So really taking our research team and using them to create data that people would be interested in, not creating, but finding data that people would be interested in with COVID hitting.
I'll close us off too. I mean, +1 to everything that you guys said, but for us, we are an event marketing software. So for us, it was really leading with empathy right away. I think all of us definitely did that in our messaging. And but I was in the final steps of planning South by Southwest, and we made the decision to cancel the day before. So what we really did was create, the first webinar that we created was a crisis mode, how to manage events in challenging situations. And so we had a panelist group of people that have dealt with cancellations before and really tried to handle how to handle that mess. And then from there, we just kind of kept moving on with questions that we got from that. I think we had over 100 questions during that webinar, and we just kept building our content for like panelists like this and ask the experts type sessions. And those have been really helpful for us to just help our community get through and both ask questions and then answer questions within the events community.
Awesome. Okay. So really what we're going to talk about tons of stuff today, but a lot of it is based on the industry research that Trust Radius has recently put together. I mean, all of us know that when the pandemic hit, we had to pivot quickly, and all of the data we had access to was pre-COVID. It didn't necessarily apply, so we all had to kind of do our best, take what we had, and go from there. So we figured it'd be a really great idea to maybe get some updated data and share that with everyone. So we surveyed over 2,000 professionals, both software buyers and software vendors across all industries. We had titles split between every single possible title from, fresh in their career to the entire C-suite, and companies of all sizes. Also, another thing that you can see here is that a large percentage of people weren't actually marketers who do events. So that was really cool to see user perspectives on this data. Okay, so first, thank you all for being here, because we know that digital fatigue is real. We've all been getting a lot and a ton of digital event invites. Based on our data, 53% of the people we interviewed are fed up with digital events. So that means the other half are actually feeling pretty good about it. So that's not as bad as we expected. But we did find that the average person gets close to 5 times as many webinar invites than they actually attend. So webinar and digital events. So people are being inundated with all kinds of information and are being even more choosy now with how they spend their time. So I'd like to get everyone's perspective on the digital fatigue and the digital event fatigue and what your experiences have been like.
I'll take this one first. I think I love seeing this data, so thank you so much for doing this. This is really helpful. And I want to take into, yes, there was, like you said, 53% fatigue, but there's also, people are still attending 1 to 3 a month, which for me, that's still pretty extensive if they're attending live. So I think there's still attendees, myself included, are still in a learning phase, but we're being much more selective. So for me as a marketer, personalizing and being really careful with my segmentation is super important to not exhaust my database, because that's where a lot of our marketing is coming in.
+1 to Keely, like 1 to 3 sounded really good to me, because that's how many we're really doing. And so if they're coming live to ours, that's awesome. And I think this is something that we all hit on the last slide that we were talking to, is having your content be relevant. And so segmentation is so important, because I think we feel as like the people putting on the program that the content is relevant to our audience, but because they're being reached out to so much, like segmenting our outreach to them actually makes it very clear that it's more relevant to them, instead of getting an email that's for a bunch of different personas and a different programs, like really thoughtfully picking one out, like, hey, this is you know, a CIO, what do they really care about? And this is the program that addresses that we're running this month or this quarter.
Awesome. And I want to definitely +1 all of those things. I think we're all on the same page. But my main point, kind of going into the content again, is, you know, making sure that the content is super sharp and to the point, you know, and making sure that the, you know, what's in it for the attendee is easy to see and easy to grasp. People are getting a lot of email, people are getting a lot of outreach. So making sure that your value prop and what you're offering is front and center, to me, has been like the most important thing.
Yeah, and one thing I'll just add on, I think that this tells me, like you said, you know, people are still attending webinars, but I also think it's really important to offer the content when it's convenient for people. So like we've seen a 30% registered to attendance rate. That's still 70% of people that were interested, but for whatever reason they didn't attend. I think we're all in this constant like digital environment, and so being able to offer the content anytime is super important. And so we've always done this, but I think we found it to be really effective right now. Not only do we make it available on demand, we put all of our content on our content hub and we don't gate it. We feel it's super important for our prospects to be able to self-educate themselves. And by not gating it, we're giving them easy access to those resources.
So I know one of our attendees is definitely going to have this question, because I have this question. How are you guys tracking that then, and making sure it's attributed back to the program that you're running?
Yep, so we use our own data, and by using our own data, we're able to see which accounts are consuming what content and when. And then we also use Uberflip and we use Drift, and so our sales team is able to easily see that information and then be super relevant when they reach out to our prospects.
Awesome.
I love that. We just did a case study with Optimizely about how they used, you know, intent data and Drift to be able to do really targeted messaging. So, I mean, that's exactly what you guys are doing. And I think that that's a great tip for marketing in general. Alrighty. So moving on, what's up with registration? So I know that we probably all have our own anecdotes and have probably seen very similar trends with this. But not surprisingly, about 57% of respondents have seen attendance rates increase since the pandemic began. My personal experience has been right when the pandemic began, people were registering for everything and attending and super excited and just trying to figure out what was going on. And since then, we've seen kind of like a leveling out to pre-COVID levels, which has been really interesting to see. So I think people are finally settling in and using their time a little bit more wisely, especially with the digital fatigue. But what have you guys seen?
I can start with this one. I think for us, we saw the same as you, just a huge uptake and like people wanting to interact with us online very early on. And then I guess I would say it leveled out, but I really don't know, because the number and quality of programs that we're running virtually today just outnumbers and is just better quality than what we were doing before. Our team was very focused on in-person experiences. That was just part of our brand and also part of the checklist of successful marketing. But we had really mastered it, and I'm not I want to be a little modest there, it had taken a lot of work to get there. But it was really something that we were proud of and excited to forge forward with. And so when this pivot happened, we didn't really have like a good baseline to compare to. We had a webinar going out every month, just systemized already. And now it's just, we have digital programs for every segment of our audience running at the same time.
I'll second that. Our attendance rates did jump pretty dramatically in March through May. And even so, registration was very high. It probably doubled. And then our actual attendance was up from, 30% to 55% for some of these, which was insane. And a lot of it was dependent on the topic. And we have leveled out. Usually summer has that effect as well. So we're kind of trying to think of maybe audio-based situations, maybe getting into the podcast game, but trying to think about retargeting and getting this content out there, because like Courtney mentioned, there for the 30% attendance rate, there's those 70%. And so it doesn't mean they maybe don't want to see that content. They just forgot, they got double booked. There's differences in schedule. Their kids needed them. So we're trying to just resurface this content that's still relevant at different times, and not being as worried about live viewership as we maybe were in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything dramatic to add. I would say for us, it's remained pretty consistent, but like Shruti said, we weren't doing a ton of digital programs prior to the pandemic. We were focused on the in-person events. So I think we're just continuing to monitor how are these programs successful, and is it live viewership? Is it, where is our audience coming from? Like, where are they in the buyer journey? Are they using it to educate? Or is it influencing deals? So that's something that we're just continuing to refine as we put our programs together.
Awesome. All righty. So some of the other research that we pulled was, why people register and why they don't. And I think it's been really interesting to see. Clearly the topic and the content is the most important. Content is king, or in our case, queen right now. But some of the other stuff was really, really interesting. And I'm going to put Shruti on the spot because I thought it was interesting to see that, 12% of people register, due to incentives, some sort of gift and different things like that. And I know you've had some cool experiences with that.
Yeah, for sure. So if anyone's not familiar, Sendoso is a sending platform. So we can help you send out e-gifts, sweets, treats, booze, direct mailers, handwritten notes, the whole 9 yards to your prospects and customers. And a big use case for us is driving attendance and registration for events, along with anything else for the event journey and the sales funnel. But we have actually seen a lot of different response rates with gifts and things. And I know a lot of people hear the word gifts and they're like, okay, well, people felt like they had to come or had to show up. Interestingly enough, we do have an option called Charity Choice, where you can actually have the recipient donate to a charity of their choice. And even that's kind of changed the game a little bit. We had a customer, PubNub, reach out to or sent out Charity Choice gift cards to people as they were registering for the event. And they actually saw a 65% uptake in registration to attendance. And so we've already all said this, like Courtney talked about the 70% of people that were interested enough to sign up that just didn't show up. So how do you really move the needle there? This is an idea. We actually did the Show Must Go On, as I said earlier, our virtual event that we did follow up with Charity Choice e-gift cards, and we saw 40% uptake in response from just a normal Marketo email. So even when you're not even giving something directly to the recipient, just that idea of giving and leading with empathy, like Keely had alluded to before, really speaks volumes. And so I also have, I want to open it up for other people to speak, but I'll add it in later. There's definitely ideas of how to use these gifts to actually add variation, the in-person feel to the events you're putting on.
I'll weigh in on that too. Having come from a conference background, We did a lot of giveaways and there's a lot of swag, and I haven't been super partial to like the booth swag. I'm not really into that, but we definitely went, I love the mailing option, and the challenge that we faced too was, do we even have their home address? Like, how do we do this? Now everybody's
We have
home
a
and
solution for you. So Sendosa
great,
has
let's talk.
yeah, so Sendosa has address confirmation. So it actually confirms the address that you're sending it to. So if you're not a Sendosa customer, this is still a best practice that you can do, is have your SDRs or the sales rep on the account actually email the person and just be like, hey, I'd love to send you something. Can you confirm your address for me, since you're at home comfortable right now? So
Yeah, that's awesome. We had an existing sponsor for South by Southwest that is Usual Wines. It's like individual wine portions. And so we actually leverage just that relationship and use that for a top accounts campaign, like an ABM campaign that we did at first, right when we had to cancel, just to make sure that we can kind of keep those conversations going. So topic for us was super important. Like obviously content is queen. I'm going to use that now instead of king. But we're also on kind of like a personal / work topic loop. And so just like there's Zoom fatigue, but I think there's also topic fatigue. I think there's like 3 different things I've talked about every day for the past few months. So I do see things like incentives increasing, and as a follow-up tactic, and both as a reason to attend live. And I also wanted to touch on the 1% exclusivity or limited spots as motivation. I think it's just really funny how FOMO is huge for in-person, or we think it is, that urgency and the as a reason to sign up to not miss your spot. But there's infinite spots often for digital events, and if you don't know by now, everything's recorded as best practice. So that is going to be interesting how that kind of gets replaced, and how we figure out how to change that strategy for digital in the coming months.
So I'm actually gonna share what I consider to be a little bit of a failure, just because I was a little bit surprised by the exclusivity piece. That's something that we use a lot. I mean, definitely for our in-person events. But we tried this tactic just to promote the fact that, you know, if you're gonna get on like a virtual event and do like roundtable style, you obviously don't want to join those things with more than, you know, 20 people. It's really hard to chat. So we tried a little bit of a round table, and we used the, you know, spots are limited, first come, first serve. And we actually didn't see a ton of success in terms of like overwhelming registrations. I think, you know, now I know that that's one, probably not appealing to people. We did try this early on when I think, you know, everyone was doing multiple webinars a week. But it's interesting to see that that's something that really doesn't appeal to people for virtual.
Yeah,
I wonder. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go for it. Go for it.
I just wonder if you compare exclusivity with that incentive and what difference that could make. I've seen a couple of other field marketing friends try that out, and doing like, if you're the first 100 to sign up, then you get this special trademark giveaway for this event. So experiment and let us know what happens, guys.
I like that idea. I wanted to close this particular section out by talking a little bit about the what motivates you not to register, and I wanted to touch on the I don't want to be subscribed to more marketing emails. We're all getting a lot of email, and as marketers, all 4 of us have sent a lot of email, especially, you know, if you're running events, you know, that's a 2 to 3 touch thing. All of you on this call have gotten at least 3 emails from me, and we'll get more with good information. But either way, one of the things that we tested at the very beginning was at Trust Radius. We did a whole research project on, you know, spending habits of, you know, tech companies during the pandemic, you know, whether they expected to spend more or spend less, or how they were going to react. And we thought that that was incredibly valuable information that we wanted to be open and free to share with everyone. So we did an entire webinar series where it was ungated. One of our main marketing things about it was, you will not receive marketing emails about this. You will not be added to our database. And we got an overwhelming success. And we had a ton of attendees, but not only did we have a ton of attendees, we had a ton of people engaging with us and following up saying, hey, thank you, this information was great, and I do want to learn more. So it almost gave people a safe place to opt in, which I thought was really, really cool. Alrighty, so now we're going to segue, doing craziness. Let's see. Here we go. So we wanted to get into the meat of talking about, measuring success of digital events, because we all know, digital events really range between webinars, summits, small chats, and different things like that. And, the goals for each of these are different. So measuring success is going to be very different. And maybe this is too much of a marketing thing to say, but to me, there's not just one magic bullet. There's not just one magic KPI that's going to say this was a success. I mean, often we can default to attendance. Oh, we had 1,000 attendees. Clearly, it was a raging success. Well, yeah, it was a success. But if only, if we had 1,000 people register, but only 10 showed up and no one was paying attention, then was it really successful? And it depends on your goals. So, this is kind of a little bit of a framework that the four of us talked about in different ways to measure success. And I think integrating, digital events into all of marketing is really important, and being able to see, how it influences and how it drives people through the customer journey. So yeah, I wanted to kick that off to everyone else and see what your thoughts were on this.
I can start this one. I think being a true field marketer, combined with how we do things at Sixth Sense, like I've never been measured on MQLs. I am measured on sourced pipeline and influenced pipeline. But I think just with the changing dynamic of events, that influenced piece has become even more important. We're really looking at where we can use digital events in active deal cycles to help move things along. I think it's a little bit easier to get people to engage with you in a virtual setting if you already have that relationship. But we found that we can make a really, really big impact, whereas we weren't traditionally focused on influencing. We were more focused on top of funnel, creating that pipeline. And I think just in working with sales, it's super important, no matter what program you're running, to help them understand how it directly impacts them. So either this is going to create more pipeline for me, or this is going to help me with my current deals so that I can, close the business that I need to hit my quota this quarter.
Yeah, and I think that really segues nicely in kind of the partnership section of things. I mean, creating that partnership internally, and I think, Keely, and I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, I think you have some thoughts on this one, creating that internal partnership and enabling your teams. And I think even true that all of you guys probably have some stuff to say about this, but I think that segues nicely into, yes, we have to measure this, but in order to be successful at these digital events, it's making sure that we're integrating within our own teams and forming partnerships.
Yeah, that is just always going to be an active thing that the marketing and sales team have to partner on. And I will say it does get challenging when even our company goals shift, and everybody, I think, did a regroup and a reforecast, and all of our plans were pretty much shattered. So a lot of it is I am really working on trying to be less of like a commercial for our sales team and trying to get their attention, and more getting to the root of how I can partner with them to help them meet their goals. So I'm asking those questions like, how do you get paid? What is your comp structure? Has that changed? And if it has, then I can know like what their motivation is, what they're going to actually be interested in following up with, to Courtney's point. And making sure that I can do a better job internally marketing to show this program and this activity with inbound equals money, because it's all about motivation for our customer and our prospects, and then it's the same behavior and motivation for our internal teams, and aligning on those goals and making sure that we are on the same page is super helpful. And a strategy we've used there too is, I can stand up webinars quickly. It's much easier to just keep churning out webinars and building those pages, especially with Splash, wink. But it doesn't mean that our sales team can absorb that information, especially as we're adapting our product itself to the current market. So making sure that I can clearly state this is a mention only, or I really need you to help me drive traffic to this, or I need you to just really focus on follow-up from this. So making sure that it's really clear and we're continuing the lines of communication on that clarity. And I'm definitely not perfect. It's always growing and iterating and just continuing to talk to each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said, like your team being able to absorb the information, like we are so close to the programs that we put together. So it's like, wait, of course this is going to work for this persona, but like they're getting it, you know, kind of at the end of the movie. So what I've been trying to do is actually start communication cycles way earlier and actually share things before like landing pages and stuff are ready, just to kind of get the team excited and rallied around. One of the other things we've been making sure of is like everything blew up, everything changed. And so our marketing team was now called to kind of cover SDR, sales, and marketing activities, obviously, and customer activities. And so our entire playbook changed. And so we had to really, really come together as a team. I know Adele said I was the first marketing hire. We have definitely grown since then. We have awesome members on our team. And so we actually made sure to have just a really integrated approach to everything we were doing. So just recently, we had a new messaging launch. When we share it with the team internally, it came out with pieces of content that were relevant to it. It came out with our virtual event that is going to be launching this week. It's called Out of the Box, September 17th. Keep it on your calendars. And so just to really get the whole team like pumped, and the Zoom chat internally was just like blowing up. Everyone was like, we're so excited. I joined every team stand-up that week to share a deck, just to share what their roles and responsibilities were in it. Each team is actually held to a registration goal. And so that is a little bit different. We've never really had CSMs attached to registration goals, but you know, as we're talking about covering the whole funnel, that gets really important. And Keely, I actually stole something from you from one of her prep calls. You had talked about building out a framework for tiering out the events that you were working on. And so what your sales team members and SDRs and whoever else is doing outreach need to focus on, and what's relevant to them, and what is included in each kind of step. And so we're doing that as well now internally. So I think just really, really treating like your programs as programs that you need to market to your own team, even though it's internal, because let's be real, like we're all on Zoom calls all day. So if you can find a different way to like spin the message or pump people up or just provide more context, I think it can just make the world of a difference.
Yeah, and I agree. One of the things I say often is you can throw the best party in the world, but if no one's there, it doesn't matter. So making sure that, you know, you're doing everything that you can to, you know, engage people internally. I mean, that's something I've definitely struggled with at my organization. We have so many things that are going out and so many different messages, and, you know, making sure that we're tiering things out and really communicating with the value, like what's in it for them, for the internal teams, is super important. And that's something that I'm definitely working on. Just to hit on the last thing is, you know, a little bit of testing. I know that we've all tried a lot of new things recently. And one of the things that I've been spending a lot of time on is testing out, you know, a lot of our subject lines and content, again, to go back to, hey, does it make sense? You know, is what you're offering really valuable? And we've seen some really, I've been wrong every single time with my hypotheses on subject lines. So I'm learning tons of stuff, things that traditionally I've seen work aren't working. So I've used some really cool tools lately to test subject lines and content, and the results have been really surprising and have helped me really fine tune what we're talking about. Have you guys tested anything recently that you want to share?
Yeah, we've been testing like more series, like the series of events that like Courtney touched on too, of how she's been running the same program for 4 months. And so I think like when we're talking about in-person events, that doesn't really happen unless you're doing a roadshow or something like that. And it's coined something and you know what that means. But with virtual events, it can really be anything you want. And so we've been trying the series. We have webinars on Fridays, ladies. We have people attending, which was not something that was kind of in our repertoire earlier from the pandemic. So we're really like trying to be creative and trying to even look at our own calendars and our own email inboxes and understand, because our ICP is marketers and so we're marketers. And so really trying to understand what is it that we want to see, how would this fit in for us, how will we attend, and so going from there.
Awesome. Alrighty.
Can I add something there really quick?
Of course. I haven't pressed next yet. Go for it.
Okay. There's no going back once you push next. For us, like along the same lines of like a consistency, we're doing a weekly demo. So we just have a weekly demo session that's like a 20-minute demo that people can attend live. And as a previous slide, people were really interested in Q&A. And so we're really testing to see, like, does it need to be live and something that they register for and show up for? But it's been interesting to see kind of like how that traffic increases or decreases depending on the time, and then you know, what's happening with them. It's a little too early to tell what's happening with these people, but it's definitely a great place to start including for nurtures instead of sending to like a static page or a product video or tour, because that's not really gated and we can't measure it as much as we can by kind of this intro to a live demo that is an actual call with a salesperson. It's like a starter. Please get on the phone with us, but you can just be on this webinar hiding behind the platform if you want. But that's interesting, and I look forward to seeing if that moves the needle for us.
Awesome. Alrighty. Okay, so what attendees want? I'm going to give you guys a warning. We are going to ask a poll question shortly about what you want, so pay attention a little bit. So one thing that, you know, all of us are trying to do is, always as marketing, we're trying to get to the right message to the right person at the right time. None of us ever really want to harass y'all with things that you don't want. And I know that we're always working on getting better about that. And so one of the questions we asked is, what's your favorite part of a webinar or digital event experience? And overwhelmingly, interactivity and flexibility were the #1 answers. And just to give a little bit of context about this particular question, it was not a multiple choice question. We asked people to give an open-ended response, you know, about what they like personally about it. And one of my favorite ones was being able to attend events in my comfies. We all know that sweatpants are the best way to attend an event. But anyway, so, you know, I'd really like to kick it off and ask you guys, you know, what have y'all been doing to improve the experience, as well as what have you seen work and not?
I'll start this one just because I didn't answer your last question. We've been testing this a lot. So we've been trying to focus more on those interactive elements, especially recently. So whether that's crowdsourcing topics, which we've done with the CMO series that I mentioned earlier on, or create more hands-on experiences. I think a lot of people are doing this, so I would love to hear different ideas that people have tried. But we tried an Airbnb experience. There's a group out of Barcelona that hand makes espadrilles. And so we did a couple of sessions with our C-level audience, again, where we invited them to come participate. And we learned about making the shoes, and everyone actually got to make their shoe live during the event. That was super fun. It was a great way just to like build relationships and give people a break from like the standard webinar content sort of event. So we're trying to do more things like that.
I mean, can I get invited to the next shoe building event? I want to do that.
I did it. It was super fun. It's so much pressure having to make those decisions live, but I think my shoes turned out pretty cute.
That's so awesome. I'm so jealous. I wish I want to try something out like that. And I think like as field marketers, it's just really a new muscle for us to get creative with engagement virtually. And I think it's like really clearly seen that our attendees want the engagement. And so definitely starting with that low hanging fruit, the Q&A sessions are pretty high up there. And so what I've been doing in webinars, especially like this, where just by nature, we can't actually speak or see our attendees, but encouraging very early on in the session to drop questions throughout instead of waiting for the Q&A, and making sure that we incorporate that into like the story that we're telling. Sometimes it fits in really well, and sometimes we just have to wait till the end if we've kind of moved on topics. We are on 24 users, so we've also really like utilized their console and using the Twitter feed and survey polls, and using like the survey polls to actually then understand who to follow up with in a certain way. So for our Show Must Go On virtual event, we had a survey going out to the attendees during the entire virtual event asking which charity would they like a donation to go to. Little did they know they were actually going to get a charity choice email, and with that they could actually choose any charity. But with that, we actually got to engage with people or follow up with people who are more highly engaged during the entire day versus kind of just sending it out to everyone and then being like, well, no one really interacted with this. And then we just kind of set them up better for SDRs for follow-up and set them up for success. And then of course, like, you know, like Courtney said, with the interactive experiences, we're really trying to, I use Sendoso heavily. If I was not a Sendoso customer, I would still be a field marketer trying to add that in. We're doing a wine event coming up with some top target accounts, and we're actually teaming up with 6 Sense on that. And so we're actually going to have a virtual wine tasting for our top prospects together. We're doing coffee making packages. We're doing quite a few things, and our customers are doing some cool things too.
What's funny is, as a demand gen manager and with a lot of event experience, I haven't really been doing a lot of the engaging style, like to be frank, but really I was trying to keep the lights on for using On24 quite a bit, and kind of just going, oh, what's this poll feature? Let's see how this works, and really just experimenting with the tools that I had available. And I think it also taught me to, like, engaging can mean different things, and I think if the content is engaging and the speakers are engaging, I think that helps a lot too. And something I'm looking forward to is doing more networking, like face to face and interacting with different people. That's something that we're still working on. We have a new Zoom meetings integration, so that'll be cool with us to try and give that interactivity and like talking back for people, and having them get ideas and share ideas will be something that we're probably going to lean a lot more into. But really our content has been engaging in that we've, like I said before, had it been driven by the amount of questions that we get or the types of questions that we get, and really trying to just stand something up. Like we did a diversity and inclusion webinar panel, which was awesome. And we're really being loose with the content, and that we have questions that we know need to be addressed based on what we've heard in the market, but then also just letting it be driven live by questions that come through, and we kind of just flow with it. So my controlling marketer side has kind of taken a back seat to just myself being more flexible and our content being more flexible, and thus more engaging for the task at hand and meeting our audience where they are from a topic perspective.
And I'm gonna have you. Oh, go for that.
We keep doing that, Keely. I love that, and I don't think you're like alone when you share that. I think most of our attendees on the line actually maybe fall more with you than with me and Courtney's approach. I think it was just kind of always part of our brand, and I think we were always challenged by our CMOs to bring that kind of like engagement level. And hey, it's part of our product, it's what we're selling. So I love that you shared that, and I think what you are doing sounds pretty damn engaging to me. So I think you're doing it.
Well, I was gonna have you +1, Keely, as well. Like we've, haven't gone as far into the experiential and gifting yet, but have really been focusing again on drinking our own Kool-Aid and saying, okay, Trust Radius, we're all about reviews. We're all about putting customer voice first. How can we better do that in our content to relate to people and have a little bit more interactivity? So we've been doing a lot more, customer focused use cases, smaller webinars around that, as well as doing more community activities with current users to get them engaged and so on and so forth. So for us, it's been more of experimenting on type of digital event as well as content, making sure that it's sharp and targeted as best possible. But now I definitely want to do like a wine or shoe building something because those sound amazing. I'm very jealous. Alrighty. Okay. Oh, it's poll time. All right, guys. I hope you're ready. Let me click to the right spot. All right. There we go. Okay, so as an attendee, how do you prefer to experience digital marketing content? Please go through, select what works best for you. I'm going to leave it up for a couple seconds just to make sure we get a nice amount of respondents, because this is all things that all 4 of us are interested in. All righty, I'm going to give it about 10 more seconds. Thank you all so much for answering. All righty. So ladies, what do you think? What do you think is going to be the #1 answer?
Ooh. Single session events.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Okay.
single session or small group video chats.
Yeah.
I am biased to say that people engaged well with like the virtual event that we did early on, and we have one coming up. But I think the key is to keep it to half-day events.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get excited about doing multi-day, but we just see drop off.
Yeah. All righty.
Woo!
Look at us. How are we so good? No. And I think that this kind of goes back to, what we've been talking about in this entire, session today is things that are a little bit more interactive or things that are super flexible. So this perfectly aligns with, the data that we pulled. So thank you all so much for sharing that. Now let me see if I can, boom, figured out the technology. Okay. So now we're kind of getting towards the end. So everyone start getting your questions ready. What we really wanted to close out with is, what's next? We all are very excited, especially those of us who do in-person events, very excited about potentially organizing that next in-person roadshow or big user summit. And it's all still really gray right now. And so we asked the question, when will you be ready to go back to live events? And interestingly enough, we saw about 40% of people won't be comfortable attending until the second half of 2021. So that means we still have a whole year. Yes, okay, yeah. We still have a whole year of digital events and really sharpening those skills and learning to engage people. And I personally don't think digital will ever go away, even though there definitely is the want and the need to have that, in-person interaction again. But I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on, what's next.
I'll start. Even though I think I know realistically they're not coming back until 2021, every time I see it in writing, it makes me a little sad. But I would say for us, in addition to continuing to push the envelope on the types of interactive experiences we can create digitally, I think, we have a relatively small team. And so one positive, with being completely digital is it's forcing us to look at what are the channels that are most successful and giving us the time to lean into some of those other channels, like Shruti mentioned, direct mail. So we're going to be putting more of our time and energy into some of those channels as well.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm same with Courtney. I really miss the in-person. I miss seeing you guys. I love always being on the show floor together. It's always so much fun. But I think for us, this has definitely just kind of changed the foundation that our marketing team has been built on. We are definitely going to have a digital component for every in-person event we go to. Guys, it really just never occurred to me that anything like this would happen. And I know it's the same for all of us. And so I think making sure, if we have a speaking session at an event, that we have that webinar ready to go the week before, and teasing that session that's going to happen at Serious Decision Summit or Topo Summit or wherever it is. And I think also making sure the message and story that we're telling is all just put together, not just with, webinar and an in-person event, but also making sure there's a field event included making sure that there's a piece of content that can follow up with it, or a tease to it, or open up to it, and making sure that like you have all these channels hitting with the same message at the same time.
Shruti, you're speaking my love language. Integrated marketing is like the thing I dream about always. And I'm gonna just like heavy plus that, like, you know, making sure that when we do those speaking sessions, that webinar is ready, that video is ready, that we've got content to share, that it's teed up. I know that, you know, many of us are running many programs at once. So really getting to that point to where things are running that smoothly can sometimes be really difficult. But I think that that's 100% the goal to focus on. And I think this time that we have now is an opportunity for us to sharpen all of those digital skills. So when live events do come back, we've already got that playbook, we are ready to go. And you know, that integrated marketing machine can keep running.
Yeah, and I'll add too, I mean, it's coming from, I used to work on Tableau Conference. It was up to 20,000 people in person, and we worked on a virtual conference component of it for like four of the years. So I have like oddly experience in transitioning it virtual and having like hundreds of sessions that you now have available and getting that out into the world in an integrated function. So I'm excited to like use those skills. And right now, that, not to toot my own horn, that sounded, but I'm gonna. But now I have all of this content that we've been able to create. And something that I didn't mention in the testing was I've really been testing all the different platforms that I have at my disposal and the different event formats. So we've been very well-rounded in what we've created. I'm actually writing a blog of like 5 different examples of formats that we've used, and then the tech that we used for it, and how long it took to stand up. So I have a lot of templates for processes that I can do, and now I've built that all out so I can just quickly like repeat them and shift as needed and build out the rest of the year and into what sounds like 2021. But like on the fun side, I really miss live music. I don't know about you guys, but I think that finding a way to be able to do that, or like partner with local wineries. I'm in Washington State, so there's a lot of them here, thinking of like different ways that we can potentially get people outside, and what that would look like. But it's a big undertaking that we could have a whole other webinar about for how to actually transition back to in-person. But for us, we're looking to repurpose the content that we have, and we cannot assume that everybody's seen it. So that's number 1 on my list right now, and nurturing the leads that have come through and making sure that I'm not just kind of like, hi, thanks for coming to this webinar, see you later. So we're trying to gamify some of that content and create more engaging experience digitally. Yeah, and really nurturing during summer while it kind of slows down, and not trying to make people come to more webinars during the summer if that's not really their intention.
I have a quick question for the panel. You know, Keely, you just mentioned transitioning back to live events, and one thing that I was like playing around with was, well, can we get to the point where we can do something outside, whether it's like taking the drive-in concert or the drive-in movie concept and bringing that to like the business setting? Do you guys think that you would be open to hosting an event like that before the 2021, you know, timeframe rolls around?
Yeah.
I think I'm a little nice.
Short answer.
I'm on the other side of that. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Adele. No, just I think I'm on the opposite side of Keely there, but it's good to know that people are thinking about it. We're just still, I mean, our marketing team has internally been a little more conservative about, you know, returning back to that. So interesting to hear.
I like the idea of, though, you know, like a drive-in movie experience, or, you know, that's something that people could attend virtually, but also if you pick key cities, people could actually physically, you know, be confined to their own area and still have some sort of, you know, brand experience. That's actually something many moons ago at a different job we executed for another organization, and it was just such a cool experience. And this was pre-COVID. It was just because drive-ins are cool. So anywho, yeah, I mean, I'm always open two ways that we can still be safe, but also engage people and do something a little different.
I do think, so just a side note too, is we have an election this year, and I have actually planned a conference on election day in 2016, which I do not recommend to anyone ever. But I do think like that is going to be a really huge topic, and we're going to not be just competing with other marketers for attention. I think we're going to be competing with many other topics in our personal lives, especially now that we work at home. So yeah, I think that's something to think about for in-person too. But I think like my short answer was yes for in-person, but I think what we would do isn't create this huge expensive like book a venue, have a session kind of thing. I think we would partner with likely local businesses that need help kind of coming back. And so I think that's where we probably put our time and effort into, is supporting our local community, both in New York where our company is based, and Seattle, and where we have some of our staff as well.
I love that idea.
I love that too. That's awesome. As we continue talking about leading with empathy, that's how you stay relevant to our audience. So I love it.
Awesome. All righty, so we're done with formal slides and presentation. So if you guys have questions, please do bring them into the question app. We do have a couple that have already come through, and ladies, we can kind of just go for it and answer them as we feel. So one person asked, what are the tools that we use for digital events? So I think we all use different ones. Right now, I'm currently using GoToWebinar, but I've also used Zoom and On24. Any notable ones from you guys?
Yeah, we use On24 as well as Zoom Webinar, and we are also testing a new one. It's called Sherpa, but they can more help with like that interface in terms of creating a cool like brand experience and chat experience.
Very cool. All righty.
We use Splash. We use On24.
Yeah.
I mentioned we have a virtual event page touch point on Splash, so we can embed different streaming services in there. We've also used Vimeo. Social Live connects to Vimeo, and then you can embed. There's a lot of different ways. We do have a handbook for that. It's the Virtual Events Handbook that kind of explains a little bit more about that too. But I'm happy to follow up with lots of tools.
Yeah, I was about to say, we did have someone in the audience ask, Keely, how can we access your blog and templates?
Yeah, so it'll be on our splashthat.com is our website, and you can find the blog. I think it's just /resources/blog. Funny, I can type it in and check. But yes, that will be coming hopefully this week if I can get my rear in gear, but if not, early next week. We do have a virtual events strategy blog series that was just released. It should be right on top. And that's awesome for what your goals are, how to choose the format that best suits your goals, and then also 28 KPIs that match up to those goals. So it pretty much writes like the beginning part of any narrative or event program for you, which is really awesome by our content person, Rebecca. She's great. So that's really helpful as well.
Also, we can personally follow up with you, whoever asked that question, with some resources. So thank you. All righty. We've had a lot of really good questions come in. Thank you, guys. We're at a minute. Okay. Okay, so one was, I recently added a hybrid event. It was online, but others in person. How long do you think hybrid events might last as the world returns to more in-person events? Or do you think hybrid events are likely to stick around?
As a marketer, I would say we gotta keep our eye on the prize and continue with hybrid events, because we just learned like anything is possible, anything can happen. So I would say get used to the hybrid events, guys. Get used to being able to access the story, the information, the vendors you want to talk to in all channels.
Yep,
Awesome.
totally agree.
I'm going to do one more question and then we can pop off. And if we didn't get to your question, we will personally, like, I'll make sure that we follow up with that because they're all amazing questions. The last question we have here was, and it kind of answers two, is there a sweet spot regarding time between the first invitation deployed versus when the event actually takes place. So have we seen times for events and registration and stuff like that? Have we seen anything good?
I mean, I'll answer this one. We see most of the bulk of our registrations come in like the week and a half before the event. Like that last email that I have scheduled, I'm always like, that's the one. That's the one that's going to get us to that goal or the stretch goal. But man, Adele, that would have been a good question for us to ask in the research, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I would say it depends on the event size. Like, I mean, if it's for a conference, you need a little bit more lead time. It depends. It's kind of correlated to how much time you expect them to spend with you. So if you expect them to give you half a day, to give them ample notice so that they can plan accordingly. If you're asking them for a half an hour, sometimes you can be a little bit more limber, and you can do under 2 weeks and do, like, I usually do first and second touch, and then anything beyond that, I start to trickle down and only look at people who've opened the email, or only look at people who didn't open. I just resend it. So there's a lot of different tactics there, but usually 2 to 3 weeks for a webinar is the time I give myself.
yeah, I've seen 2 bumps in most webinar registrations. One is in the first invite, which is usually like a week and a half before, and then the last invite, which is like the day before the event. And that's when I see the most activity in terms of registrations and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree with understanding like the size of event. So I like for a bigger like half day event that we're asking for time, we do an email like a month and a half before, actually, like 5 weeks before. And then, but the truth is people only really know their schedule as it gets closer. So that's what I bank on, guys.
That's when reminders get so important. Those
Yes.
tactical, yeah, making sure it's on their calendar, things like that, and make it easy for them to find and remember.
Oh yeah, I've actually, it shouldn't be this manual, but like for some of the events that we've been doing, like I've actually just been updating calendar invites and adding them to it, because that's like I mean, people have done that for me, and I'm like, oh, when did I sign up for this? Oh, that actually looks really interesting. I'm gonna go, because time's already blocked off on my calendar for it. So got a little sneaky there.
Awesome. So we are at time, unless anyone has anything else to add. Thank you all so much for sharing your insights and getting on this call and chatting through the research. We will be sharing the research on trustradius.com next Tuesday, so we'll have a full report of all the research that we did, as well as we'll be sending out the recording of this webinar, as well as the slides later today. So thank you all so much.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.